Good afternoon, all of you. So we have in our midst today Mr. Harkeerat Singh, who has got All India 10th rank in this year's examination. So let us all welcome him with a big hand. So welcome to our program.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
He has kindly agreed to come and address you all and share his experience of having prepared for this exam. His first the service preference was IFS, and he will get it, and he is very happy about it. Congratulations, and he always wanted to be a diplomat, and he is going to be one for the country. And he was a student of this institute, and he will also help you to how to integrate your class teachings, learnings with your self-study. So please listen to him. He will share his experience of preparing for this exam for about 1 hour 15 minutes. Thereafter, he will hold a question and answer session with you. You can raise your questions, doubts, etc., and he will clarify. Thank you very much. So now, Harkeerat, it's for you.
Thank you, sir.
All the best.
Sure. Hello. My name is Harkeerat Singh Randhawa, and like sir said, I got the 10th rank in UPSC Civil Service Exam 2021. This was my 6th and final attempt, and also I was at the end of my age limit as well. I'm 32 years old. Now, I started this journey right after my graduation. I graduated in 2011 from St. Stephen's College. I did history honors. So in 2012, I gave my first attempt. My first attempts were not as good as I would have hoped for them to be. My failures initially came in the preliminary exam, and twice I failed in the preliminary examination. Then after that, I reached the mains. I succeeded in qualifying pre. Then 2 times I wrote mains, but I could not get an interview. After that 1 attempt, I again failed in pre, which was the attempt before this. And then this, my final attempt, I got the 10th rank. Now, I would like to discuss my journey, how it started, how it went, and how it now ended. Now, those of you who are sitting here today, those of you who have come here, you obviously are already on the path to becoming whatever it is you wish to be. I started in a way that was also similar to you. When I was around 17 years old, I told some reporters who had come to my school that I want to grow up and become a diplomat. So I said this in front of my friends, in front of my teachers, and quite a few people found out. I do think it is important, first and foremost, that if you are an aspirant, if you are giving this exam seriously, please do not hide it. Please do not think that if you just quietly give the examination, don't tell anyone, don't tell your friends or extended family, that you might think that if you don't succeed, that you will not face some shame, that no one will know that if you gave the exam or not. Please tell your friends, tell your family, tell anyone you can. And there are 2 reasons for this. Firstly, it will put a certain degree of, I won't say pressure, but it will put some motivation on you that you have made a stand. You have told other people that I want to be IFS, I want to be IAS, I want to be IPS. So that will give you a boost. It will help you, for example, work harder. It will help you overcome obstacles. Second reason I would say is that, you do get some maybe blessings, maybe some good wishes, maybe some moral support, which you would not get if you were just by yourself. As far as the exam is concerned, the preliminary exam, you have to see it not from the point of view of any other exam you have given before. Not your school, not your college. Nothing will compare to the civil services experience, and nothing after it will be the same as this. This is a unique process. You have to totally reinvent how you approach a syllabus, UPSC syllabus, how you approach a question, and how you view your own performance. Whether you let a particular setback stop you, whether it can sway you away from your path. So as long as your path is clear, as long as it is a genuine dream, not based on anyone's pressure, not based on any outside influence, but genuinely it is your heart's desire, that will play a massive role in your success. Now, preliminary examination by its very nature is an extensive exam. It is not intensive because of the vast range of the syllabus, the number of competitors, and the lack of scope for any subjectivity or depth. You will not be able to give any sort of any background, any context, anything at all. You will simply be asked, tell us which of these 4 options is the best. That is all. Now, for that, you need a particular method of study. You need to be able to view any question, whether from polity, whether from geography, society, and you must understand what a right option looks like, because every option has a particular, let's say, flavor. In every question, if you have A, B, C, D options, you will start noticing that there is a pattern of what UPSC considers to be what they want, what is the right answer. Now, it is not uniform. ऐसा नहीं है that you will pick up some formula and then that will help you clear every question. It is that you will understand what type of questions come and what type of answers are the right answers. Now, the day of the pre and the preparation I'll get to later, but the actual pre itself, which you will be giving, I believe, next year, in that, I will suggest in paper 1, the first thing you do is do your first pass of the paper, by which I mean go through the question paper, go through the entire question paper from the start to the end, and those questions which you are 100% certain about, immediately circle them. If you are 100% certain about them, get to the end of it and you might have circled something like 45, 50, 55, 60. Your preparation, your hard work is to increase this number, the ones which you are 100% about. For this, you need to cover the basics. For example, in polity, yellow books, Lakshmikant, and general current affairs readings, if you do this, you should not have a problem dealing with those questions. Now, as far as the second pass, the second read through of the question paper, here you will notice that the ones which you had left, the options which you had not failed, which you are ambiguous about, you have to do a risk analysis there. You have to look at the questions, the options, and find some level of confidence. If the level of confidence in a question is, let's say, 50%, 60% plus, you should possibly go for it. Now, that is again your discretion on the day of the exam, how you feel when you see this question. But my suggestion is that on the second pass of the prelims paper, you should increase your number of questions answered at least by 5 to 10. You need to take at least that much of a risk. You cannot restrict yourself to an attempt of just, I think, 60 or 50 questions. That will not work, because the ones which you are 100% about, the reality is that some of them will again be wrong. So you have to work with the assumption that the second and then the third pass, they will make the difference. Now, the third pass is the most important one, because now you have just a few left empty, a few questions which you have no idea about, which you genuinely are not just ambiguous about, but you don't have any reference. You don't know what it could be, where it came from. Now, in that final category, it is very important for you to be careful. So your attempt, the number of questions you attempt there, I would suggest that 80, 85 total. If you add up all your attempted questions, should be something in that range. It can be a bit lower, but it should not go above that. By which I mean, I have friends who used to attempt almost 95, 100 questions, and the tragedy was that they would have qualified if they had stayed at 80, because they had that many right answers. But then the negative marking, the 1/3 negative marking, that brought them below the cutoff. Now, as far as the preparation of preliminary exam is concerned, I would advise that it should be integrated with mains, because if you do it separately, that you will do polity for prelims and then you will do polity for GS2, you will, number one, run out of time. Number two, the details, the facts, the figures, the examples which you picked up in your pre's, you may not be able to use them or access them for your mains answer writing. So instead of having a silo or a different approach, that prelims and then mains, you should have a singular approach. So for example, polity from the pre point of view, the yellow book and Lakshmikant any other standard NCRT if you want to look at from political science, those will give you a background, a foundation, and an ability to answer objective questions. For example, who appoints this person, or what is the difference between this and this, or what was this committee about? So here there is no scope for breadth or of depth. You have to know the fact, you have to be able to access it, and then circle the right bubble. Now in mains, for example, I'll give polity example. There it is a totally different but still linked game, because in polity of main examination, they will not ask you a objective question or a short question about who appoints who or what committee was set up for this. They will ask you an opinion, or they will ask you for your assessment of a scheme or of, for example, a law, a proposal, an amendment. There, if you have now separated your preparation, if you thought that you will just prepare for polity for pre, and then once pre you clear, you will not look at that again, and then for GS2 you think you will do some separate preparation, you will miss out on the value addition component which you get from pre. Because when you are studying for pre, for example polity or any other subject, you will be noting down, making notes of facts and figures. You will go into small granular detail. Now you will not have time to do this again after pre. So if you think first I will do pre-preparation, make notes for that of a different type, then after that, or maybe alongside that, I will make some separate notes for mains polity, that will not happen. It will end up duplicating effort, and you will end up not gelling it. You will not be able to either marry the assessment or the opinion with the facts. So if you do it together, you can get a comprehensive view. Now, how do you go about formulating that integrated approach? That takes a little bit of, I won't say it takes effort to plan that, but you need to be a little smart in how you arrange your topics for study. For example, if there is a topic in GS paper 1, which is, I believe, urbanization, migration, demography. This is in GS1. It is partly geography, partly society, they have given this. So if you just do paper 1 preparation, you will end up with a very mixed bag of subjects. You will be doing history also, you will be doing culture also, geography also, society topics. Instead, I would suggest that this topic which I mentioned, like urbanization, migration, demography, this, and for example, this is a part of your economic geography or human geography. So maybe you don't have to follow a paper-based approach. You can form your own modules. That's what I did. I would link up the topics which, like I said, here GS1 topics, I linked them up with geography as a larger subject. Or for example, in GS1, you have a topic called the impact of climate change and the impact on the cryosphere, which is basically, it's some part is environment, some part is geography. It is not distinct. So that is in GS1. Then in GS3, you have environment topic, and they have not specified much about environment, just said environment and then environmental impact assessment they have mentioned. So if you do it separately, you will miss out on the convergence between these topics. So instead of separating them, have a unified topic called environment/geography, and in that you can have your Indian geography, your theory of geography, which is your physical geography, the phenomena, the geophysical phenomena, and then if you want, you can try to bring in the elements of GS3 also, like environment, conservation, wildlife. So that forms a linkage with geography. So if you do that, when the questions come either in GS1 or GS3, you will be able to muster material from the other paper. Because in this exam, I will say the biggest key to my success this time was that I could form some interlinkages. Now, everyone mentions this, so what exactly does it mean? And how do you get into this habit of linking things? What you must do is, first, like I mentioned, stop viewing your attempt or your syllabus as papers and stop viewing it as standalone. It is one common field of knowledge. So for that, you have to be willing to take a hybrid approach, by which I mean don't think that a topic, any one topic is distinct or it has no connection to the others. when you make your notes or when you read your yellow books or when you read standard books, I will suggest that instead of trying to read a book from cover to cover, or instead of, for example, if you're doing current affairs like recitals of Vajiram, instead of just going cover to cover, what you can do is make a set of modules or a set of, I won't say topics, but macro topics. And then, for example, instead of studying the current affairs of a month, instead of saying that, okay, now I'm going to do current affairs of January 2022, you will say, okay, today my purpose is to study environment current affairs. You will do environment theory also from yellow book and from any other standard book like Shankar if you want. But then at the same time, you will decide that I will do the last 12 months or last 24 months of current affairs on environment. Meaning that you will look at the back issues. You will see whether it is any source you want for current affairs, and you will open it up and see the environment section in it. Or you will look for the topics on environment and you will not read the rest of it. So each of these monthlies or each monthly compilation from any source, they will have in indexing, they will have some differences like economy, polity, society, culture, history. So instead of reading the whole thing and saying that I have done this month's current affairs, you will just do the environment part of that. This has two benefits. One is that when you do this, you will have a perspective which is much, much broader than others because you have seen a subject or an issue evolving. For example, if there is a proposed environmental law or policy, if you just go month by month that I will do this month's current affairs, you will get a very standalone and isolated understanding. If on the other hand, you have studied environment and its current affairs from the last 12 to 24 months, you will see that how it happened. Initially, there was a suggestion and then some committee was set up on it, and then later a amendment came or an ordinance came, then it was withdrawn, and then the Supreme Court intervened. So if you have that narrative on it, you have a particular understanding of it, not just as it is now, but you have a background. So then when you write the answer on any question they ask, you will create a proper sequential narrative that the origin of so and so policy was in this and this committee in the year so and so. It was subsequently brought in as an ordinance in this year, and then subsequently it became a law, and then now Supreme Court is looking into it. And you imagine how different that answer looks to the paper checker. So he sees someone else who has written a very cut and dried answer, which is just one dimensional, which has just focused on what is the present situation, that presently maybe something has happened regarding it and you have just remembered that. So you will just write that. And then someone sitting next to you will write the whole sequence of events, the entire background of it. This is a way of marrying your current affairs with your static and your theory topics, because there is no distinction. The theory which you study used to be current affairs in that subject, and the current affairs will eventually become the theory. So for every one of these macro topics, whether it be history and art and culture, if you are doing that topic, open up the recitals, open up any other current affairs source which you find useful, and like I said, go backwards. If you want, you can go to, I would suggest maybe 24 months, 12 months is also sufficient in my experience. But I have noticed that in the last few years, UPSC has begun to ask current affairs which are not so current. Like this mains in GS3, there was a question on blue LED and the Nobel Prize which was given for it. And this was, I think, several years ago. So if you have followed, let's say, 24 months of current affairs, it will, or 12 months of current affairs, it will give you this advantage that in those 12 months, it is possible that the news which occurred 5 years ago may have been mentioned once again. That some obscure committee which was set up maybe in 2012 and has never been mentioned in newspaper again after that, immediately it will come in UPSC. But if you have studied like a consistent, if you have gone back some time, it would have been mentioned maybe as either being rejected or successful or failed. So it will give you a deeper level of understanding. Now, as far as your preliminary exam is concerned, it is a nerve-wracking experience for everyone in every attempt. Like I told you, Initially, I failed pre twice, then I gave main twice, and I could not get to the interview stage. And I thought that now I have established this level, now I will not fail pre. But this was the problem, I took it lightly. In that attempt, I put too much emphasis. In my attempt before this, I put too much emphasis on my main preparation. So I focused on editorials, I focused on getting assessments, understanding, opinions, like which you need for your main examination. As a result, I somewhat neglected the objective little facts, the current affairs of that particular year, which you need to get above the cutoff in pre. So please do not neglect either side of this, because you need both. Now, regarding the subjects themselves, now you would be aware that there is no hard and fast rule regarding what can come in terms of weightage. So 1 year you could have a massive weightage for agriculture, and it may even be a little unfair, because I have noticed that some years the questions in pre's on agriculture environment were a little bit closer to IFOS level or a bit specialized. So next year it could be heavy on history and culture, and the next year geography could dominate. So please do not enter into this delusion of thinking that you will try to focus on whatever is the current trend. If this year they asked on government schemes, next year you may get 0 questions on it. So you cannot assume that some trend will pick up or will be followed. Everything is subject to change. The only way you can get through is if every single subject, every single topic, you have a minimum level in. So if, for example, you are trying to get through into, let's say, if you want to get into the mains and you are finding that you have failed, like I failed twice initially and then once again, so you will find that there is a need to change your perspective each time. Every time if you suffer a setback, I'm not saying in terms of attempt, I'm saying if one day you have trouble studying, if you were distracted, or if you did not fulfill any goal you had, please do not just go to sleep and wake up the next day and repeat that, because if you get into that pattern, days, weeks, months will start going in that same trend. If you could not fulfill your goal even in one day, for let's say you set up a goal that today I am going to read the environment current affairs or polity current affairs of so and so time period, and you found that you were distracted, you were watching TV or social media and you didn't do it. So that means that approach needs some change, because it has not given you motivation. You need to change it. You need to, for example, maybe I said that you have to go back 12 months. Maybe you should not think like that. Maybe you should think first I will just do 2 months. Maybe you should break up your work into smaller and smaller chunks, smaller and smaller periods, in which you then become comfortable making small goals, achieving them, and then each day adds on the next. So this exam is not that you will read something one day and then that will be the thing which takes you across the finish line. No one question can do that either in pre or mains. You have to have a continuous thread which adds on top of the existing knowledge, and the only way you can do that is if you have a firm understanding of what the exact nature of each step is. Now, I told you that the preliminary examination is of this nature. It's objective, highly specific. You cannot neglect the specifics. It is tough to prepare. If it were not, then it would not have that massive, I think 5 lakh people appeared for prelims last time, and 9,214 cleared it. So what I mean to tell you is that those people who could not clear it, they must have either focused on mains too much, or their overall preparation was not up to the mark. If you wish to get through to mains in your first attempt, I will strongly suggest that you please focus on it as a standalone, and standalone in terms of a goal. You view it as one step which has to be taken for the next step to occur. And in terms of your mental makeup, there is a tendency to think that I will prepare now for the preliminary exam, the prelim day will come, and then after that there will be some X period in which I will be preparing for the mains. You have to view your entire period from now till the next year final result comes as one chunk of time. And in that period of time, you have to make sure that every single element is moving at the same speed. Because a very big pitfall in this kind of exam with this kind of broad syllabus is, you may, for example, find international relations interesting, I do, or you may find your aptitude in economy. So you will maybe unconsciously start reading more economy and focusing more on it, going too much into depth. As a result, maybe your history suffers, maybe your geography suffers, and your preparation becomes lopsided. It's not balanced. So for that, my method was that I would divide my time into chunks of around, let's say, half an hour, sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes half an hour. You have to decide what your attention span is. If you can hold your attention span, your full focus on like for example, economy, if you can do for 1 hour, then the next 1 hour you will immediately shift to doing society. Then the next 1 hour you will do your goals in, let us say, history. Then the next 1 hour or the next half hour, it will be a cycle continuing, for example, of schemes. So that way it may seem to you that you are doing little, you are not really making a big dent. So you will have a tendency to think I should do some massive topic. Let us say I want to just get rid of all of the topics of, let's say I want to do environment, the wildlife parks, sanctuaries. I decide I will just sit and do all of them. What will happen is 2 days will pass, 3 days will pass, 4 days will pass, a week will pass, and you will become complacent. You will think that you are sitting to just prepare this topic, and your whole thread of preparation will go astray. So please divide your time each day into whatever way you feel best. So if you, for example, find that you need a particular sequence of topics, that maybe after studying history, you immediately want culture to be the next topic you read, please do that, because your tendency to link these topics is the very foundation of what I said, that linkage. So when I said that you spend 1 hour doing this topic, then 1 hour doing this topic, then 1 hour doing this topic, that will, without you having to make an effort, that will automatically make connections in your head. Because other aspirants would be spending, let's say, one whole day doing just one silo, one topic, or one subject. So invariably when they write either in the pre, or when they circle in pre, or when they write mains answers, they would not develop the linkage, because their preparation was such that that topic had no linkage. That topic was just something they did on one-off. It was not linked to the rest of it. If it is done as a part of this larger cycle, you will automatically form these linkages. Now, as regards the main examination, main exam, I will say that one of the biggest decisions you will make is your optional. Now, in terms of optional, you may choose to take your graduation subject, you may choose to take an entirely new subject. That's up to you. Do not think that there is any issue with the next level. That some people think, if I did history, and then if I took PSIR, maybe the board at the interview stage, they might think that why did you not do your this. Don't worry about that. That will not be an issue. You have to choose that optional, which I will not say is not hard work for you, but which is a labor of love. Like, if you study that topic, if you read that topic, it is not something which you are struggling with. It is something which comes naturally to you, and that is necessary because, number one, you need a very great level of depth in optional. You need some depth in your GS 1, 2, 3, 4, but in optional you require, I would say, honors level answer writing to match the level set by others. So professors are checking that. If it's a PSIR optional, it is a professor of political science who checks it. So you need to develop an approach which is not just like other GS papers, not like GS papers. No matter what your optional is, it has to be in the way you answer it unique. So if you are taking history, you cannot look at other people's answers or mock answers and then think, I will just copy this format, I will write my answers like this, or I will use this method. No, that person's method worked for them in one particular attempt, and like I said, there is no guarantee of any attempt, of any method being consistent, nor of any approach. So I would suggest that you choose an optional which gels with your personality, which you find interesting. And also one element which I would suggest is that if you can find some linkage between that optional and your target service. In my case, I said that when the interview board asked me why did you choose political science international relations, I said that because it is the closest in convergence to the job duties, responsibilities of IFS. So that shows that your optional also is a part of your overall preparation, not just something you chose because it is scoring. And as far as this tendency of people to chase some trendy subject, some trendy optional that this year or this last few years maybe this optional is getting undue marks or this optional is not getting marks, I will not pretend that all optionals are equal. There is a difference, not just in terms of how they're checked, but also in the type of content they have, in the type of answers you can write. If you are more interested in getting into heavy scholarship or giving names of scholars, thinkers, if that is the way you think your answer would be, that would make you suitable for PSIR or, for example, history. If, for example, you are very, very example heavy or you view things in terms of current linkages, then maybe another optional is for you. But please, please, please do not follow any trend on this matter. Do not listen to anyone who tells you that this optional will not succeed or this optional is guaranteed success or some optional you can buy some ready-made notes and get through. Somebody might not, but I don't think it is that likely that you will just pick up some ready-made material and get through. Because if you do that, if you try to go for some approach where you can minimize your optional workload and just pick one source and just focus on that, what will happen is everyone else who is giving the optional with you in main, they will be doing the same thing. So the paper checker will see similar questions, similar approaches, similar examples, even similar placement of like facts and figures, because somebody has made a mock answer or somebody has made some notes and then everyone just copies that. That will make your answer script seem unremarkable. That will make you seem unremarkable and not special. So you have to endeavor to make sure that when somebody sees your paper, there is a stamp on it that this is my paper, this is who I am, this is the way I think, this is my interest, these are my proclivities. I will give an example of how you can try to expand your approach in this sense that essay, for example, essay paper, that is considered tricky by some people, but I don't think it is. I think it is one of the easiest papers that you will ever write if you view it from the right frame of mind. If you understand what exactly an essay is, what is the structure of an essay, or what is the meaning of an essay, then you will understand that it's not just about mugging up some facts and figures. For example, if you write an essay on women's empowerment, that you just say these facts. It is not a GS. It is not general studies. Essay is its own beast. For essay, you need to have a very, very flexible, loose, almost literary style. So like literature, it has to have a flow. Every paragraph should link to the next, and your examples, not just in essay, in other papers also, your examples are the most important part of your answer writing. In GS, it is examples. In optional, it would, for example, be your scholars or your thinkers. But here I will give an example. In essay, I used quotes from various sources. Have you seen the movie Jurassic Park? So there is a scene in that in which one person says that your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they never stopped to think if they should. So that's, I think, one character, Ian Malcolm, says it. So in the essay exam, I just wrote it. I wrote that quote, was stated by the character so-and-so in the movie Jurassic Park. And that did gel with the answer, that gelled with the essay, and that made it, I believe, a little bit unique. So if you have read a poem, if you know a song, if there is some personal anecdote you have been through, if there's some experience, please do not be hesitant to integrate it into the essay. To some extent, it can also be done in GS. In terms of GS, maybe ethics GS4 is more suitable for this, because in GS4, there is a theory part, no doubt. The first part is theory. Case studies will be the most important part of this paper, because number one, there are so many of them, they carry so much weightage, and number two, you know the format of a case study. It's not some great mystery. If you can understand that, if you can practice it, if you can get into the habit of writing case studies or thinking of case studies on just for no reason, even when you're just sitting talking to your friends, get into the habit of creating options on any issue. Let's say if you want to see where to go for dinner or where to go like just to hang out, anything, try to just get into this habit of being critical, by which I mean evaluating options, seeing what the stakeholders are, basically becoming more process oriented rather than just standalone. So you view every answer you write as a process. It is a beginning, it is a middle, it is an end, and it is on one level it is a standalone question because you will get marks out of the allocated marks for that question, 12.5, 15. But on the other hand, it is not standalone because the examiner will see so many questions together, one after another, 20 in your GS. So he will notice some tendencies in you. He will notice your proclivities, your habits. He will notice if, for example, you tend to write very good answers in the first questions and then the quality drops disastrously in the last 5. It is not a good trait. That is an absence of time management. So there must be some consistency between the level, quality and content of all answers. Secondly, a very, very big problem I have noticed both in my previous attempts where I could not qualify for interview and also when I talk to my friends is that there is a feeling that if you do not know the exact answer, let's say in GS to something, or you feel that what you do know is not sufficient or is not, let's say, the best possible answer, and then you will leave it. A lot of people have done this. They think that if you write what you do know or if you try to link something there, then the examiner will not be happy and he will think that you are not being sincere. It's not the case. If you have anything in your mind about that topic, if you have any anecdote, any example, any sort of personal experience on it, if you read some other subject which has some tangential linkage to it, please, for God's sake, write it down. Put the points down. Do not leave an empty page in UPSC main examination. I will tell you why, because in a lot of questions in this attempt, especially in GS3, I did not know the granular details because it was my last pre, so I had prepared for that and then I thought no more pre, so I will now focus on this assessment or opinion-based approach. And in GS3, they asked questions which were again pre-level. So they asked, for example, like I said, blue LED, which got a Nobel Prize, what are the issues with it? Or they asked, give a technical evaluation of S400 and compare it to the alternatives like Aegis and other types of systems. There it becomes a matter of often you may not even have a tangential knowledge. This will happen. There was a question in 2015, I believe, on something called the McBride Commission. So no one had any idea about it. There was absolutely no reference point, no idea, no concept. There you have to try to understand what exactly is the source of this question. So if you have a GS2 paper and you have seen that there have been questions on polity, there have been questions on some questions on IR, and then suddenly some question comes which you have no idea that whether it is from here, whether it is from there, so you do not know what you will write there. Then try to think, what could it be? Try to just use your imagination. Would it be about the UN? Is this in GS3? So could it possibly be about security? Could it be linked to, for example, economy or environment? Then based on that, you will have to take a little bit of a risk if this question comes, and this type of question will certainly come. If not in all papers, maybe in one or maybe two, you will have one or two questions, sometimes 2, 3, which have no cues for you. There you have to do a little bit of guesswork and you have to make some sort of argument. I'm not saying that you just write totally irrelevant stuff. I'm saying that you try to bring your background knowledge here. If it is about, for example, this time they also asked on WHO and some its recommendation on air quality. If you do not know what the exact recommendations are, please do not think that I will not attempt this. What is WHO, World Health Organization? You can write 1.5 to 2 sentences on that. You can give some context about that. Then you can try to link it to the contemporary situation. You can sort of join it together with India's air quality standards, the national air quality measurement standards, the color coding system. So you will end up with some sort of, I will not say it will be a good answer, because if you have no clue, it cannot be an excellent answer or a good answer, but you have to understand that in this exam, perfectionism is the path to failure. If you think that you will do some topic to perfection, you will do every source possible, or that you will be able to, in an answer, write everything you know about it, that you will put out a perfect answer, you will not be able to. You will not succeed, because perfectionism will essentially change the entire approach, because then, first of all, your entire speed of preparation will slow down. You will think that instead of having done this topic, instead of having covered environment, or if instead of having covered, let's say, security in GS3, you will think I have not covered it. I have to again go into it. I have to again see some new source. I have to again add something, and I keep doing that again and again and again. As a result, in the pursuit of perfection, that topic never gets closed. That topic just remains open, and you end up sacrificing so much of your time, so much of your attention, which you could have focused on a broader array of topics. So please do not be a perfectionist, not in life, not in this exam for certain, because you will not attain perfection. It's not possible. UPSC is not giving anyone 100%. Pass marks, like rank marks to get a good rank, is between 48, 49, 50, 51%. So that is the standard here. It is not like school or college that you will get very high marks, and you should not expect to. Your purpose here is not to get marks. Your purpose is not to get good marks in any one question or to get good marks in all questions. Your purpose, your goal is to be comparatively better than the other aspirants, because it is an elimination stage. It has no merit. It will not count to your final performance. You just have to get through that barrier. Now, the day of the pre is, I would say, one of the most important days of your entire preparation schedule, because in GS papers, for example, in my case, during GS 3 and 4 days, I was not well. I had a bit of food poisoning, so my marks did dip a little in that, but still, I could make some sort of arguments. I could draw some linkages, so I could defray the influence of that. If, on the other hand, I have not slept properly before the prelim, or if I have not had a proper diet, or if I have not been having a balanced diet before the prelim, or if I have been staying up all night and trying to cram before the prelim, the impact on your performance can be disastrous, because pre, the way it is organized, the way you have to immediately recall something, bubble the circle and then move ahead, that requires presence of mind, alertness and sharpness. You must be alert, and you must be ready to hit the ground running when the paper comes before you. Now, as regards your mains, in the main exam, each day, you will have a problem that you will have to face two papers in a day, and then the next day again you will have 2 papers. So if you go for this approach that you may not sleep, or that you will just try to keep studying, you will crash. So you have to have a healthy, balanced approach there. One thing I forgot to mention is CSAT. Now, I mentioned that CSAT, I did not clear prelim twice initially. That was because back then CSAT used to be having merit, so I am not so good in maths, so I would not get good marks in that, and hence would miss the cutoff. Nowadays, people have begun to, ever since it became qualifying only with 33%, a lot of my friends, they underestimated CSAT, and they could not make it to main exam. So they either thought that reading comprehension is very easy and you should not prepare for it, or they thought that QA is too difficult, and again, if you are arts background, you should not prepare for it. As a result, they lost such a great opportunity. They might have gotten excellent marks in GS1, but CSAT, because they did not make the effort or did not take it seriously, they have missed out. CSAT, I would suggest that the only way to get through CSAT is practice, both for reading comprehension, for QA, quantitative aptitude, for logical reasoning, general mental ability. Please get some book or some booklet which has the previous year's CSAT questions of all types for reading comprehension, for logical reasoning, GMA. And if you see some solved questions, see how the solution is if you don't know the method. If you don't know the fundamentals, like for example, I had forgotten what the formulas were for volume or for area or these sort of things, work and time, please brush up on those fundamentals if they are a bit rusty. That way you will not have to face this issue of CSAT spoiling a journey, because that is not a good thing, that everything else you prepared but this silly little CSAT has come and spoiled it. CSAT should be the least of your worries. RC, I want to mention something about reading comprehension particularly. Individuals like me who are from arts background, we tend to think that we will dominate in RC. We will get through prelims, through CSAT by just doing reading comprehension. Do not underestimate the difficulty of reading comprehension. The questions in RC, I will say, can arguably be tougher than the quantitative aptitude, because they are ambiguous. They have a degree of sometimes confusion. Some options can be similar, and which option you may choose, it may seem right to you, but it is a little subjective. Even though the marking will be objective, but the question for you will be a little subjective. So please view RC very seriously. If you are arts background, or if you are from an area where you think that you will just take it for granted, please do not. Please practice reading comprehension. Number one, you need some speed there because the passages are quite big, so you need to go through it fast. Number two, you need to be able to extract the data, the information, the cues within each of the reading comprehension passages, and you need to be able to link it to the questions asked. Another thing is that there is a bit of a shortcut in RC which I have found. It does not apply each time, but if there is, for example, an article from a newspaper which is given, or some sort of policy note, or some literature, please try to identify what exactly is the essence of this. So is it arguing in favor of, let's say, changing the way India handles international relations? Is it talking about the impact of humans on the environment? Is it an attack on some other element of social injustice? Whatever it is, try to see what the essence or gist of that RC is. Then if you have 2 options or 3 options which seem a little bit close in terms of interpretation, go with your gut feeling. Try to understand that if you wrote that RC, if you wrote that newspaper article or whatever that source is, what would you have expected the answer to be? That should give you some bit of an edge, rather than just trying to view each question. For example, each RC will have 4 questions, 3 questions, 5 questions after it. Please read the passage, understand it, maybe for like a few seconds, think over it. Don't just immediately jump into these questions. And please do not do something which I have noticed my friends did, that they did not read the passage, they would straight away jump to the question. And then they would try to say, okay, now I will just take a shortcut, I will go in and just try to extract that. That can be disastrous. It may give you a shortcut, but please do not do that. Please read the RC properly and then pause for maybe 5-6 seconds, think, digest it, then go for bubbling any answers. Now, in terms of the main examination, GS 1 to 4, you will have to create a work schedule system, a workflow system, which integrates all 4 papers into your overall preparation. For example, GS4, it does not directly link up, because ethics, integrity and aptitude you will not get in prelims. They will not be asking you like Kantian ethics or deontology in your GS paper 1 for your preliminary exam. But it will give you some degree of depth. You will understand that each one of those topics, each one of those silos, you have to view them in terms of the overall exam. So if, for example, GS3, the syllabus, or GS2, the syllabus, it mentions, let's say, agricultural economics, animal rearing, animal husbandry, MSP, please understand why they have included these topics here. They have included them because in India, generally economics, developmental economics or economic theory has neglected agriculture. There has been a tendency to focus on money, banking, these topics or these areas and view agriculture as a sort of secondary idea. So please do not do that. Agricultural economics is a part of economics. It is rather, it has become more scoring because it has a much more limited scope. If you understand this subtopic, if you understand MSP, if you understand food procurement, if you understand economics of animal rearing, that is a great shortcut for you, because if you have gotten some, let's say there is a topic in GS 3, inclusive growth. So there, I'm not saying that you should make a massive amount of notes on it, but please at least make some approach paper, some idea of what exactly inclusive growth is. Use your yellow books, use your current affairs material, and you can jot down the definition of it. You can jot down not more than, I would suggest, 3 to 4, maybe 5 sets of statistics. So Oxfam report has said so and so, and do not keep adding to that. Do not think that you will add 20 other indices and 10 other committees. You will end up forgetting the whole thing, and there will be no integrity, there will be no linkage between the entire topic. And the advantage of this would be, let us say that in GS2, they ask you something about inclusive growth, and it is not directly about inclusive growth. It is from an angle which you have not studied. Since you have prepared this basic approach paper, this basic note, no matter what the question is, you can write something. You can show that you have an awareness of what this particular area is, what this particular subject is. Now, sorry, I was mentioning GS4, I got sidetracked a little. Now, GS4 is a little unique because it does not directly link up, the theory part does not directly link up with your pre. So you cannot entirely integrate it, but I will suggest that when you are studying, for example, culture, or when you are studying history, or when you study contemporary politics, please do not view GS4, ethics or integrity or aptitude as outside of that. If you read about Lokpal, if you read in current affairs about Lokpal or polity about Lokpal, or if you read about some change in Central Vigilance Commission or CBI or whatever it is, you can utilize that in your GS paper 4 as an example, as a warning, as a case study, no matter what it is. And that way your GS4 answers will not just be some sort of theory floating in the air. The examiner will see that if there is a question on what are the values required for public service, what is the difference between integrity and honesty, if you have given examples of this from contemporary India, from the contemporary world, then that will give your GS4 a much better chance of taking you across the finish line. GS4 in particular is very scoring because the theory is not so vast. So if you can master it, if you can understand it, if you can grasp that, you can do the theory part quite satisfactorily in less time. It should not be an issue. Now, I did a mistake in this attempt in GS4. Now, I will tell you so that you don't repeat the mistake. I spent too much time on the theory in the questions. So I was giving too many examples this time, and I spent too much time trying to give perfectionist answers in the theory part. If they asked for 10 values of public service, I gave 10, but then I wrote 2 sentences for each, and then I gave some other examples, and the whole thing became too vast. So I barely fitted it into the space, and I was very happy with myself. So I got to halfway of the paper when the theory ends and case studies start, because then that part is case study, and I had around 1 hour left. So I had to rush through the case studies, and unlike the theory part, you cannot rush your case studies because a case study requires some degree of reflection, some degree of intuition, and you have to also cite some ideas from ethics, morality and aptitude in each case study. If you are saying that these are the options, these are the pros, these are the cons, and then you say that this is the appropriate choice, this is the appropriate option. There, if you give the ideas in terms of how you can link that to your first part. So if there is a topic called deontology or the deontological approach to ethics, or if there is a utilitarian approach to ethics, then in your case study you can justify your decision by saying, as per the deontological approach, this option, which is based upon doing one's duty regardless of the outcome, is the appropriate outcome, is the appropriate option. Or if you want to go with the utilitarian approach from ethics theory, please cite that the utilitarian approach of Jeremy Bentham or J.S. Mill, whatever you want, that shows a better context for this option. That way the examiner will know that you are not just showing options and dismissing them or trying to just make some sort of flow chart. You are giving a very considered, very, I would say, sophisticated approach where you view each ethical dilemma, each ethical conundrum, not just as a standalone event, but as a canvas upon which you can paint various elements of theory. So any part of theory can come here in the case studies. Yeah, one more thing I will say is that parts of GS4, let's say governance parts or good governance parts, they definitely have an important linkage with your current affairs. So for example, EGOT, Karma Yogi, or some sort of new method of personnel management or administration or anti-corruption or methods of reducing some sort of malfeasance, these can all be found in current affairs. Like for example, I mentioned Lokpal. If Lokpal has come out with some new approach, or if there has been some new institutional change, that will come in your current affairs. But that material is absolutely necessary to be integrated into your ethics theory part. So like I said, in GS4, integrate your theory with your case study with theory, and also the entire thing with your current affairs. Now GS3 also was not very good for me because it was a very, very granular paper, and like I said, I thought that now I'm in mains, so I will focus on this larger level approach. And when I was doing science and tech or environment or these topics in GS3 for mains, I was doing them from that perspective, opinion based, and as a result I neglected to revise and make my mind completely refreshed with those prelims level facts. So in prelims I had awareness of the exact details of S400 and what the alternatives were, but what happened is that I did not revise those little details, and as a result I could not muster the level of detail needed to get a little bit higher in each of them. GS3 in particular is often the paper which people fear the most, obviously because it's the vastest in terms of the number of topics in it, but also because they will just say environment. They have written environment and EIA, but what they don't say is that that is such a vast, almost endless subject where you have new discoveries, new animals discovered, some new policy. So in that case, I will again suggest, please do not get lost in a sea of information, particularly in GS3, because this is the one where that will happen if you let it. If you have, let's say, science and tech, do not think that you will do science and tech as a topic. Break it up into what the components are. For example, biotechnology. For example, nanotechnology, robotics. This is given in the syllabus. So when you are doing science and tech, you are not truly just doing science and tech. You will decide that today I am doing the theory and the basics of, say, nanotechnology. That is your goal for, say, today. Then I am doing the current affairs of science and technology, and in that, if you want to be even more granular in your approach, even from your current affairs you can focus on that subtopic. Meaning, if you open up some sources, they will have indexing and sub-indexing. So they will have, for example, science and technology, current affairs of so and so month, and inside that they will have subheading or subparts, like for example, like I said, robotics or any sort of thing like environmental technologies. So you can also decide that I will do the previous 12 months or 24 months of current affairs, not of just science and tech, but specifically of biotech. What that will do is, it may seem like you are going to take a longer time, it may seem like you are taking a laborious approach, but when you do that whole stream from start to finish, you will have, like I said earlier, an integrated understanding of the general picture of environment or science and tech. Now, what will happen is that UPSC can still try to outfox you by going to another topic, some obscure thing, some unknown invention, some unknown geographical phenomena. They can always do that. In that case, if you have done this due diligence of getting the basics of what is the evolution of this subtopic over the last year or last 2 years, even if you do not know exactly what that topic is, let's say you have done last 24 months of biotech and a question comes on some specific element of biotech which you may not know exactly, since you have that knowledge, you will be able to integrate some sort of idea of this committee, there was this law, and then this led to so and so controversy. Now, the examiner will not give you very high marks for that because you have not addressed the exact thing he asked for, but he cannot also, in my view, people say that they give 0. I don't think that they will give you immediately 0. I think if you demonstrate some level of competence in that area, if you show them that you have kept abreast of the developments in that area, even if you don't exactly hit the bullseye, and even if you are beating around the bush, he will be, I think, he or she will be forced to give you maybe a few marks, maybe 1 mark, maybe 2 marks, maybe 3 marks, and that can make the difference between you getting the interview call or getting your service or whatever it is. So please get this idea of having some domain knowledge of each of these topics. GS3, like I said, environment is there, science and tech, economy. Then you have these security topics. Security topics they have given like Naxalism, money laundering, cyber security. This is the easiest part of GS3 for you because they have already broken them down into such specific little bites. So money laundering, you can become I'm not saying do money laundering, but become an expert in money laundering. Understand exactly what PMLA is, understand precisely which body is going to enforce it, understand if there is some commission sitting to unearth the money laundering or black money. That way you will find that it is a much more restricted scope, and if they ask something about that, like I said, you will be able to muster some details, some facts, and get some marks, which is all you need. Like I said, perfectionism is a path to failure. You need to be good enough. You need to be just good enough to get to your goal. You don't need to get some surplus marks. That will not be of any advantage to you. Now, GS3, like I said, vastest subject. Please do not get so focused on GS3 or the subtopics in it like economy or science and tech or environments that you lose track of the other subjects, because GS3 subjects I have seen in my experience, since they are so factual, since they are based on developments in the real world, like some new discovery, some new invention, they are in their very essence much more granular, much broader. So get a basic understanding using your yellow books, using whichever source you are comfortable with, and then stop it. Stop studying that topic. Like I said, if you have done biotechnology last 12 months, current affairs, if you have done the statics from the yellow books of what exactly biotech is, what is green, what is white, what is yellow, what is blue biotech, and if you know the applications and all, that will give you the sufficient knowledge you need for that, full stop. You cannot go into depth in that and start doing a PhD on that, because you will lose out on much more scoring topics, and at that point the whole purpose of the exam is lost. So GS3 is very tricky. It will try to draw you into an endless cycle of preparation. So you will end up just writing down, if you start making too much of intensive notes on GS3 topics, you will just write down every single invention, every single new animal or plant or butterfly discovered, and you will end up confused. So keep it reasonably limited, because GS3 by its very nature will have some limitation on its ROI, at least I think so. However, in preliminary examination, on the other hand, these topics are more important because they cover so much of the prelim syllabus. So I will suggest that at the pre-level for these GS3 topics, you should go into granular detail, extensive detail. After that, do not go into that much depth, that much of specific detail. Instead, try to look at each of those topics which are mentioned and get at least 2-3 pages of material on each. That should be sufficient for GS3. Now, GS2, this is, I would consider, one of the more interesting papers because in my experience, in my case, it almost perfectly aligned with my optional of PSIR because it is half Polity, half IR. I'm not saying that PSIR offers any distinct advantage over everyone else, but I will say that if you can find, if you have PSIR optional in any case, if you do have that optional, please try to integrate the scholarship or the knowledge you have in those questions into GS2. Or if you have any other optional and you have just come across some new view, somebody wrote something on Twitter, like I used to follow Brahmachalani, Harsh V. Pant, various thinkers in politics and IR, they write on Twitter. What they would do is, if they come out with a newspaper article, or if Brahmachalani says something about India, China, he will also put on his Twitter a link, and that link he will also write maybe 3 sentences giving his gist of it. So if you want to get this kind of scholarship for GS2, you can go through these social media accounts of these personalities. The list of these individuals should be kept restricted. For Polity, you should have some, I would say 10-15 people who are thinkers, who are established thinkers, so that, for example, in Polity GS2, there will be a topic on, say, judicial accountability. Now, there are some retired judges, there are some law ministers, some constitutional scholars. So they have been giving in newspapers or through various magazines certain views. So if you write an answer saying that judicial accountability and you give the details and facts, that is a good answer. But if you can add this type of scholarship to GS2 specifically, there's no scope, I think, in GS3, less scope in GS3. But GS2, if you can get some perspectives, some sort of opinions, that will make your GS2 answer stand out from the rest. And GS2 also has an advantage that, unlike GS3, it is not as unlimited. There is a much narrower focus. For example, when you talk about IR, they will not ask you on some random little country having some little issue. They will try to ask you, for example, about the Ukraine war or about the Syrian war or whatever is contemporary. So you can, with your current affairs, get a good grasp of what will come in GS2 based on what is happening in the world around you. This is an advantage over GS3 because in GS3 it is quite broad, but in GS2, if you get your current affairs in order, if you are fully versed in, like I said, 12 months to 24 months going backwards on each topic and subtopic, you will have a much lower chance of those type of questions coming where you have nothing, which can happen in GS3. They can pick up some random little factoid or some invention. In GS2, they will ask some established thing. They will ask about some committee which is somewhat prominent in India. They will ask about some law which is in current news, not some 10-year-old law which no one has heard of, which can happen in GS3 type topics. So please be current affairs heavy for GS2. And like I said, if you get the time, please try to integrate from either newspaper editorials or from, like I said, social media handles like Twitter. Some thinkers, like I think Suhasini Haidar also writes IR articles and various thinkers do. So they just give a little gist. Please just jot it down, or if you don't have time for that, or if you think that is too laborious, at least read it and try to just understand what has been said. So what will happen is that because it is an opinion, because it is a view, because it is a sort of statement, it is not so granular that you will have to by heart memorize it. Whereas in other topics, you will have to know very specific things, that the range of BrahMos is X kilometers. It has this payload. In this paper, you can instead try to attain a little bit of a higher, more sophisticated level, an intellectual level, which is not that easy in GS3. So please view GS2 as a very high scoring opportunity with much less effort required than GS3. I don't mean that it is some easy, no, it's not a cakewalk, but I'm saying that if you integrate your current affairs with your statics, and if you break up the topics, like they have said there in IR, they have in the IR part of your GS2, they have not just said it is international relations, they have said groupings. For example, one topic is global groupings, by which they mean everything from G7, G20, G77, all of these bodies. That is quite good for you because there are only X amount of such bodies and only a few of those are of any prominence to the world. So please, in that case, if that is the topic there, make some notes or do some readings on all of the international bodies. Or if there's a small topic like diaspora, I love that idea that there's such a specific topic. So please become an expert in Indian diaspora, because it's a much smaller topic. So know that there was a ministry which was then abolished because it was found that it was duplicating effort with MEA. Know that what Pravasi Bharatiya Divas is. Have some awareness of the contributions of prominent Pravasis or diaspora, starting with Gandhi ji, or you can include scientists, thinkers, whoever. So that in that, or for example, diaspora issues with the Gulf or with Indian workers being exploited. So because it is such a small topic, you can get some degree of mastery over it. I will not say perfection, but mastery, which is quite good. So if you have that prepared, if you have 1-2 pages on diaspora, or if you have 1-2 pages on groupings, or for example, any other of these topics, you will be in a much better position to write a concise, crisp answer, which will make up for the somewhat less precise answers you might have to write for GS3. So here you can, if GS3 is your challenge, or if you are a little apprehensive, GS2 is your big chance to make up the difference. So please focus on GS2 a lot. You can get a lot of marks. GS1 is again a little bit tricky because it starts off with history, art and culture. Now these, as you all know, are vast subjects. History, particularly for our country, it is almost, it's gargantuan. Culture again, because if you see these standard books on culture, you will see that there is so many types of music, so many types of dance, so many types of puppetry, of circus, of movies. So there again, do not go chasing every detail down. Do not think I will find out every single detail. Unlike GS2, here again you will have to have a bit of an extensive and a bit lighter approach. So in terms of culture, get a good understanding of, for example, performing arts, performing culture like your dance and music, and then your literary arts or visual arts. Get some idea of what the overall perspective of India's, let's say, architecture is. I'm not saying that you have to go and find out one small structure, what is the style of it. Instead, understand what is the Mughal style, what is the Indo-Islamic style, what is the Gothic style. So what are the types of temple styles, what is Panchayatan, what are the Dravidian styles. So as a result, if you have those broader concepts down, even if they ask you some very small detail, like some small art form which you have not heard of, or some type of architectural or literary element which you don't know, if you have that idea of the overall perspective on Indian culture or Indian history, you can make an approximate answer and you can get surprisingly good marks in that. History, art and culture, history is particularly perplexing for people because history by its very nature is a collection of all that has happened. So it seems a little undifferentiated. It is so massive. So you will have ancient India, you will have the cultural history of ancient India, you will have the political history, social, economic, and so forth. So in that case, I will suggest in history particularly, please find some standard source which you will organize your entire preparation around. I particularly in this attempt found the yellow books of Vajiram in this case to be almost totally sufficient. If you want to add other sources, it's up to you. But like I said, unlike GS2, please do not think that you will make notes of 500 types of dances and that will have any ROI. If you can read that, if you can just scan it, and then the topics which you know, like Indian painting. Now, there are lots of types of Indian painting, but there are just a few which are very prominent, like the Kangra style or the Rajasthani styles or Madhubani. or various tribal forms. So at least have an understanding of those big ones. Or when it comes to dances, please understand at least the more prominent ones. And as far as the dances and performing culture is concerned, UPSC has shown a tendency to ask a little bit, I would think a little bit too detailed. For example, once they used to ask in my earlier attempts, I think first or second, that in Kuchipudi dance you balance on so and so type of dish, or in this type of singing you use Sanskrit, or various types of granular details. So please do not think that you will become an expert in culture or expert in history and then you will answer. You have to get a level which is appropriate for just one paper, which is your GS1, and even then a part of GS1. It's not even all of GS1. So if you do history so intensively that you are spending weeks and weeks just doing history, in the end you will just get one paper and some part of it here. Regarding pre, it's a little more important because in pre they do ask a little bit heavily on history and culture. So in that case, I would suggest for these two topics, history, art and culture, for the pre at least, please do extensive reading. So don't think that you will memorize it. Don't try to memorize it. Don't think that I have read it, okay, it does not register, I will read it again, and then I will keep doing that and not move forward. If it comes to low ROI topics like this, like the endless forms of Indian culture, there please just get a sufficient level and stop. Again, I'm saying stop there and move on to the next topics. Do not let that become your whole week or your whole month that you are just doing history, art and culture. That is not appropriate. Now, apart from those, you have geography. Now, geography is again a vast subject, but I will still consider geography as relatively easier because in geography, the standard sources, the static sources have been fixed for a long time. So if you have your yellow books are almost, I would say, quite sufficient. If you want, you can add some specialist books like G.C. Leong for this theory of geography, or some people do D.R. Khuller also. I did that, but that's a very large book. So only try to approach that if you have, number one, a lot of time, which I do think you have. So if you do want to do that, it is up to you in addition to the yellow books. And if you do these kind of big sources like D.R. Khuller or any other large source, please do not try to read it from beginning to end. You will end up spending a month doing that. Don't do that. Look at the high ROI topics in that. In Indian geography, for example, understand rivers and drainage. That is more important than, let's say, physiography is important, but they ask more questions on this side, I have seen. So read it all, but have some greater focus on, like Indian monsoons. The UPSC has been obsessed with this for like decades now. So the method of the monsoon, how it operates, the various theories, you need to become an expert to some extent on that. Or when it comes to, let's say, the types of the geographical landforms, the soils or such things, so those are limited. There are not endless types of soils, they are limited. So in that case, use your yellow book as your foundation. On top of that, if you want to supplement with some standard book or some higher level book, you are free, please be free to do that. In geography also, it is important to develop a habit of drawing maps. I am saying this not because I drew maps, but because my friends did, and they had success earlier than me in, I think, one attempt earlier, because they drew maps quite religiously. So in geography papers, this time, for example, there was a question on like some, I think, volcanic eruptions where they happened, or maybe it was a different paper, but there, for example, some individuals would even make a map of the ocean and show where the island is. Or if the question is on monsoon, make a small little diagram. Don't have to make it too beautiful. Don't just start becoming an artist and trying to make it like some sort of work of art. Just try to make it reasonably good so that the message is shown. Like, for example, if you make the monsoon, don't try to make India very, very perfect and spend time. Just show the lines of where the monsoon comes from and prove to the examiner that you understand it and that you know it on a visual level also. So that can help you in geography particularly. In geography also, it is important to do some preparation from atlases, that maps, because UPSC has a habit of asking things like if there is a line between so and so, which state will it touch? Or if you have to go from Assam to Tamil Nadu, how many states will you cover? Or such things. So there it is tough to do that on the spot. It will take some time and it may not be that easy. So, or they might ask that which city is on this river. Oftentimes they will link it to history, like there will be some historical site, it is on some particular level. In prelims this time they asked, I think it was Ellora Caves, and the ravine of the Vagai River is beneath it. So for example, if you know where a historical, geographical or specific location is in relation to rivers, landmarks, mountains, please make a habit of buying an atlas, take some empty papers, scan the outline of India with free hand, do it for a few days, few weeks, you will understand it will become very easy. It won't be difficult, it will happen, and then get into the habit of forming a visual connection with geography, because geography is a very, very visual topic. So please do that. And you can also include some flow charts, some type of, some sort of diagrams if you can. That should be sufficient for your geography. Now, geography is not just one subject, it is a few subtopics here, like you have your physical geography or theory of geography. This is a little bit trickier for some people because you have various types of landforms, various types of drainage patterns, very specific types of geographical phenomena. Here, again, please do not go so much into depth that you lose track of your time and management, because geography also can become a quagmire, it can become a swamp, so it will pull you in, it will pull your time away. So stick to your standard books, stick to your yellow books. If you have to choose one extra book and then add some material from that into your notes, or if you just read. And there's also a topic called, like I said, human geography, which is your census, demography, these things. So since it is mentioned by name, please become very, very aware of the specifics of that. Economic geography is again mentioned by name. Resource location, resources, global resources, industrial location. So there is a theory to that. There are theories of industrial location. There are general patterns of industrial location resources. Become well versed in that, so that no matter what specifically they may ask, you have a broader view and you can answer it. Now, after geography, you come to those little topics in GS1, like your society topics, communalism, regionalism, poverty. I think poverty is also there in GS2, so you see the linkage, GS2 and also GS3 rather, because like for example, poverty, inclusive growth, these things in terms of the sociological or societal element, that is in GS1. The GS2 will have the policy element, like if there is a approach to removing poverty, it will come in GS2 from a political level. If on the other hand, there is a question about the method of calculating a rate of poverty, Tendulkar method or any other method, that would come in GS3. So you understand this type of topic can straddle 3 papers. Please try to identify those topics which do this. Now go through the syllabus and use a pen and paper and try to understand, like I said, poverty, inclusive growth, these will be straddling, and furthermore, they have enormous potential for you in essay as well, because these little topics in GS1, I have noticed the UPSC has a tendency to ask sometimes one, sometimes even more in essay from that. This time it did not happen. This time essays were a little bit philosophical. So that is a distinction this time. But otherwise, if you have a good grasp of the GS1 society topics, you can tackle the essay in a far better way. So you see linkages keep emerging. The way you will get to these linkages, the way I understood them, is every day you must write down the syllabus, and then every day you must keep looking at it, look through the pages of the syllabus and try to either mark certain things, like make a X star or write 1 and then 1 here. So for example, 1 would be your poverty in society part of GS1, and then you just put a little star in your GS2 for the policies to remove poverty, and then you put a little star in GS3 when you make the notes of method of calculating poverty. So therefore you have a multi-dimensional approach to answering the question. This would be the most beneficial way to deal with GS1. Now essay. Essay is considered one of the, I said it's considered very interesting, but there has been a trend, there has been, at least what I have noticed when I talked to my friends who gave this attempt, is that they were a little bit taken aback by the type of essay topics this time. I, for example, chose in the first essay, the real is rational and rational is real. And the second one was history repeats itself, first as tragedy, then as farce. So in that case, people think that if they have prepared factual details for essays, or if they have a more factual bent of mind, they think that they cannot tackle that essay, that they may lack, for example, the literary capability to create, because it's quite a lot of writing. Essay, unlike your GS papers or even optional paper questions, it's a lot of pages. It has to have a flow, it has to have some sort of rhythm which goes on for this many pages and which concludes in some satisfactory way. That is not something which you can get just from doing facts and figures. If that were the case, it would just be part of GS. They have made it separate for a good reason. Now, if philosophical topics are there, I would suggest do not view it as some sort of threat. It is your biggest advantage if that comes, because when you have a factual essay, like a few years ago, there used to be essays on, like, I think federalism or river water sharing or some sort of thing like governors and some things. There, if you choose that essay, no matter how good you may write, since you are using the same set of facts, somebody else and most people who are writing the same essay, they will have the same facts, the same figures, perhaps even the same, because there will be X number of articles, constitutional articles, or some law, and they will all be saying the same thing. So when the essay goes before the person who checks it, it will not stand out. And in essay paper, above any other paper, above GS or above optional, you have to stand out from the crowd. So here, please do not be shy to use anecdotes, examples, stories from any source. Like I mentioned, you can use from a movie, you can use from a poem, you can use any source you wish. And do not, one big warning here is, if there are two essay topics which you think are a little bit close together, which seem like one topic might be, let's say, women's empowerment, one might be, let's say, something about social justice in India. So problem here is that they are very close together, because one is an element of the other. What will happen when you write two essays which are this congruent or this similar is that your examples, your arguments, and your approaches in both essays, they will be a little bit similar. So when the examiner reads it, he won't get that novelty from the second essay. He wants to have two novel essays. So please, when you choose the essay topics, your first topic and your second topic should be as diametrically opposed as possible. If the first topic you choose, if they give like the first set of 4 options are totally philosophical and the second ones are a mixture of philosophy and, let's say, factual types, if you choose a philosophical essay for the first one, your second one should be more factual. Or if they have only given you philosophical type essays, the themes should be as distinct, as opposite, as far away as possible. And even then, when you are writing the second essay, please pause for like maybe a minute or two, collect your thoughts, and in your mind shut down your thought process for the first essay. Shut down the narratives you had built, stop thinking in that same method for the first essay, and start afresh. Create a new foundation, create a new paradigm. I would say even change your perspective. If in one essay you were maybe defending some practice, or you were trying to advocate a more proactive approach, or you were trying to say that intervention is better, or whatever it is, in the second one you can even show a somewhat different perspective that shows that you are not unimodal, you don't just have one track minds, that you can adapt your thinking, you can adapt your thought process based on each essay. Now, if you make them as separate as possible, and if you include as many specific anecdotes, by which I mean, please don't go to some book which has quotes in it by very standard figures, like, the father of our nation often has said various things. So you can use a few of those quotes, or you can use maybe, if you wish to use a famous figure's quotes, I would suggest using maybe a quote which is a little less known, not something which is so hackneyed or boring, because If it is so accessible or if it is so common, then a lot of other people will be using it. The best way to do this is to draw the examples from your own life, your own experience, or something which other people may not or most likely will not write there. If you do that, you will have a enormously different essay. You will get good marks, and the marks they give in essay are also quite generous. So if you put in that amount of effort in essay, you will get a far higher ROI than, let's say, GS3. Now, regarding your optionals, optional is something you have to choose on your own. I mentioned to you that it has to be the process of your own idea. You have to think about what gels with your personality. At the same time, you cannot follow trends, that I told you. In the writing, in the answer writing of your optionals, please do not make them like GS answers. No matter what your optional is, if it is a history optional, if it is English optional, if it is whatever, you have to make it stand at a much higher level. Similarly, you cannot make your GS answers totally like optional answers. You cannot go into so much of narrative or sophisticated depth. What you can do is you can pick up some scholarship or some ideas you saw there. Maybe you have PubAd and you picked up some theory there, and you can put that in GS2. Or maybe if you have any other optional, you can integrate that. Now, regarding the optionals themselves and the performance in them, I know it is highly variable. Some years, some optionals go up, some go down. Please do not think it is because of the optional. Optional is optional. It is about the people who are appearing that year. It is very possible that some optional could have made people top the exam, but the individuals who qualified for mains that year, they were not in the best state of mind for that optional. So do not write off an optional, nor should you be thinking that some optional is guaranteed success. I will also suggest that when you make your time management, when you plan your studies, please make sure that your optional gets a far greater proportion of your time. Because to get a good understanding of your optional, you need to go in depth, you need to have a broader array of sources. So like I said, when I was talking about GS and not getting sunk in, for example, these big subjects like economics or geography, the reason why you shouldn't do it is if you do that, you will lose time for other GS, and more importantly, you will lose time for your optional, which has a far greater ROI. Regarding the overall process, I will not talk about the interview much, because the interview as such, the personality test, I personally think that your personality is something, what do I think? It's true. Your personality is your whole lifelong perspective. It is over years, decades. It's not something you immediately come up with. I won't go too much into detail on PT, but I will say that please try to have a consistent and integrated personality without contradictions. If you are saying that you wish to be a public servant, this was your dream from since you were 5 years old, and then the board asks you, but why did you do this? Why did you for this job? You should have a story. Your life story should make some coherent sense. If you have a dream, if you have no backup, it's okay. I had no backup, and they didn't ask me that, but a lot of people have some sort of, I think, profile insecurity, that either I have a gap or maybe the college I graduated from or various things. Please dispel any of those notions. You will not be judged like that. It will be totally a test of how you can carry yourself, how you deal with a challenging environment or a cordial environment, up to them. So to reach to the interview, to get to that most exciting phase, first and foremost, you have to start with your preliminary. I will suggest that those of you who are now committed to giving the exam next year, please start the current affairs program I told you right now, like from today itself, because if you don't do that, the months will keep adding on. So if you start from now, you can do the previous 12 months current affairs, or you can have then, when the exam comes closer, you can go month by month also. You can do the present current affairs also, rather than waiting for the prelim to come right on top of you and then rushing around to finish current affairs, because that will become quite harrowing. So please start current affairs at least. Please integrate your current affairs with your GS and other papers. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a not so specific advice. This is specific advice. Some general advice I will give you on how to approach your entire attempt. Now, how many of you, just raise your hands, How many of you have a specific service which is your dream, like a specific service, any specific service, not just civil services, but you are committed for IAS, IPS, IFS, IRS, doesn't matter. Do you have that in your mind? Okay, now the rest of you, please also raise your hands and please get that. No, don't use joking. Please go home or go to wherever you stay in Rajendra, and in your mind create an image, create a vision, not of you getting like top rank, not of people congratulating you, like all that happens when you get ranks and newspaper reporters come and they make your parents feed you. That's not important. Visualize yourself. If you want to be IPS, visualize yourself wearing the uniform out in the field, diffusing a communal riot or improving the law and order of a district. Or if you want to be IFS, visualize yourself wearing a suit, sitting in the United Nations General Assembly and arguing for India's position against Pakistan. Visualize you doing that. Visualize the duty itself, not just the idea of getting into service, getting a rank. Please do not try to focus on getting a rank. Getting a rank is a very random phenomena. I got 10th rank and the person who is 1 rank below me got 1 mark less. The person who is 9th rank, he got 1 mark more than me. So it is not that different. Yes, it's true that the first ranker she has a big difference, but it is very variable. That cannot be your target. You cannot say I will get 50th rank. You can't say I'll get 10th rank. That will not happen. You need to focus on a vision, and every day when you get up, when you go to sleep, whenever it is, in your mind's eye, please try to see yourself doing that duty, and not just for people's praise. Don't think of it that people will applaud me or people will celebrate me. That is a very superficial level of motivation. That motivation, if you move with that I'll become some famous person or I will get publicity, if you have that motivation, what will happen is when you face challenges, when you have to work hard, when you have to cover topics, that motivation does not go deep into your heart. That is just you have some idea that maybe you will show some of your parents or relatives that look, I have cleared. That is not any deep motivation. Deep motivation is that you want to dedicate the rest of your life, decades of your life, to some service. So please have a particular service in your mind. Always visualize yourself doing that duty, not just getting into the service, doing that duty. Forget about the result. Forget about getting a result, like I said, any particular rank. Just think that you have already completed your training from the Vasana, you have done your probationary period, and you are in your career. You can, even if you want, visualize yourself further off in your career. There is no restriction on your imagination, and if you imagine yourself in this manner, it will start organizing your thoughts. It will change how you view yourself. If you, for example, want to be IPS and you visualize yourself wearing the uniform, instilling law and order, preventing, for example, harassment of women, preventing the victimization of the weak, you will notice that when you study for GS2 or when you study for GS4 or when you are studying for essay, your approach will not just be of a student or of just an aspirant. You will be someone who thinks of themselves as a future IPS officer doing a duty. If it's for IFS, IAS, you will have that particular idea, and your motivation will be of an entirely different level. It will be more resilient, and it will be immune to failure, by which I mean, if anyone fails, I hope every one of you can clear the exam in your first attempt. I hope all of you can get the service which you wish. And if any setbacks do occur, if you have this motivation, if you have this level of commitment, you will not find it that challenging. Another thing I wish to say is that a lot of people ask, why do you give this many attempts, or when should you stop giving attempts? So what is the level of commitment you will have here? Here I will say that there are two types of approaches or two types of people in the world. Some people, they look for a career. A career is very good. A career gives you financial stability. A career gives you some social standing. A career will allow you to have a family. A career will give you progression. A career is necessary, and a career is the basis of most of the world. But there are some things in the world, some professions, if you may call them, public service being, I would say, top among them, which are a calling, a bulawa. You get a calling, you have a urge, which is far deeper than you thinking that I will get this salary, far deeper than you thinking that I will do this or I will get this benefit, this perk. That calling is that the whole purpose of your existence is to become this. That your whole purpose of being born, of giving this exam, of coming here, is to become this type of officer. So if you get that level of approach, if you understand yourself and you move in that way, I don't think that you should have any trouble. As regards the actual nitty-gritties of preparation or for each specific subtopic, which source to use, I would suggest you start writing down the syllabus. Actually, what you must do is the syllabus UPSC provides, you must write down every point of it that you know, but just spend a few minutes each day looking at it. I'm not saying just look like blankly, but try to see what exactly is this, what are you looking at, and it will give you a greater perspective, it will give you some awareness. Then when you look at sources, I will again and again say that I myself used yellow books quite foundationally because they give a concise and crisp presentation and they are aligned with the syllabus points. Above and beyond that, current affairs, like I mentioned, that has to be your labor. I will suggest if you can use newspapers or if you use the Vajiram recitals, that is up to you. I also personally used to read around 4 newspapers. I would read 2 Indian papers and I tried to at least get 2 foreign papers, which is New York Times and Washington Post. Some websites you can get the ad block free version. If you want to move in that direction, you can also take some magazines, like some periodical, like The Economist, or if you are interested in IFS, like I was, the Diplomat magazine. So that will give you a far more deeper, more sophisticated approach. And as regards your overall perspective, like your family pressures, your mental pressures, whatever it may be, I have to tell you that, as you can imagine, this is my last attempt and it was also my last in terms of age. So it was a do or die attempt for me. It was the only way I could achieve my dream, and I was successful, thanks to God. But I will say that if you do embark on this process, and you all have, since you are sitting here, since you are already committed to doing this process, please do not be ashamed of it. Do not hide it. Do not think for a second that you are missing out on something, that somebody else is doing something else and he will go ahead or she will go ahead and you will just be writing exam. What you are doing has a great meaning to you if you are committed to it, because it is such a great challenge. And if you are willing to put yourself out there, not just to go for some job where there is no entry barrier, if you are willing to put yourself up in front of that challenge, you don't have anything to be ashamed of. You don't have anything to be afraid of or be nervous about. Just be calm, be collected, be resolved, and have a flexible, open mind. And finally, I would like to say before I open for questions is that if I tell you something, or if any topper tells you something, or anyone else tells you something, please do not accept it blindly. Use your own thought process. If, for example, the method I said for current affairs, maybe that may be too tedious, maybe that is too much hard work, or maybe your own personality would be that you would like to cover an entire month's current affairs and you can remember it better. If that is the case, immediately do that. Forget what I said. So you have to, I can just give you some pointers for what worked for me. You have to find your own path and you have to gel it with your personality, your working style. If you like to study in the morning, study in the evening, whenever it is, how many hours, please do not count the hours. For this attempt, I did not put in that many hours. I focused more on understanding, reading, and then after I would read something, after I would read the current affairs, or after I would read some static topic, I would spend maybe each day around, I would say 2.5, 3 hours, not studying, but just sitting around, just thinking about this, walking around my house, going to my terrace, going outside to the garden, and just try to think about what you have done today. At the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, or what you have done the previous day, try to just visualize it, think about the connections, think about or imagine something. Maybe when you read it from a newspaper or from a current affairs source, it may just seem very surface level to you. And if you don't apply your mind later, it may just skim off. But if you spend maybe some time each, at least maybe some minutes, maybe a few hours every day, just thinking. Now, I know people often say that people might think it's a waste of time, that you should just be making notes all the time and just be reading. You need some degree of reflection, not just on the contents of the paper you are studying for, not just on the material, but also on yourself, that where are you going right or wrong. And please do not let the days, weeks and months just pile up on you, because they will. Please do not think that I will do this tomorrow or next week. What will happen is that the days will turn to weeks and months, and suddenly your pre, which you think is very far away, is not far away at all. It will come rushing towards you. So please start from today itself. Get yourself familiarized with the syllabus. Understand what type of questions they ask. Go through previous years, general studies, essays, optionals, whatever you can go through, and see what the level of the questions is, see what the level of UPSC is, and try to understand if you are approaching that level. I will also like to say one thing which I don't think would apply directly to you yet, and I hope it never does. In my case, I have also dropped attempts, because if I had given all my attempts in one go, I would have lost my attempts and I would not have 10th rank. But point is, in certain situations, let us say that the prelim is now on the 5th, and let us say you have told your family that I'm giving pre this time. You had told them maybe 6 months ago, 1 year ago, and you thought that you will get prepared for it, but what you found is the pre is few days away or few weeks away, and you know what the level of pre is, and you know you are not there yet. So you will have peer pressure, you will have social pressure, whatever, family pressure, that no, don't drop it. You are anyway committing so much time. Just give this attempt. Don't worry, you will clear. Don't worry about it. People will tell you this, and if you do that and you waste your attempts, you cannot later go to them and say, but you told me to give this attempt. They will say, you should have known what was best for you. They will not come to your rescue later, and it is your life. If you miss your attempts, or if you waste your attempts and you don't give your full, the consequences will stay with you for much longer than any sort of sadness from dropping one attempt or from being circumspect about your level. Please be honest with yourself. Please see if you are, let's say you are a week away from the pre, and you give the previous year's pre just as a mock, or if you get mocks here, and you find that you are nowhere near the level required, let us say that you are getting much lower, then please make a decision based on your self-interest, not on any pressure. Likewise, if you think that you genuinely are above the level and that you seem to be getting good marks in mocks, then even if nervousness does come, even if some hesitation comes, that you have to deal with, that is a natural part, then please give the attempt. But like I said, if you genuinely find that there is something lacking, or you have made some mistake, please do not think that you just have to go and sit in the attempt. Please be very, very economical with this, so that every attempt you give, you learn something. It is not just a meaningless blind attempt, and you can therefore go from wherever you are now to your goal with the minimum amount of, I won't say suffering, but there is a degree of hardship. There is a degree of emotional and psychological pressure involved, because not just in UPSC but in life generally, everything you want, personal life, economy, whatever, money wise, career wise, every single thing which you want, which is worthwhile, which is worth having, it is behind a barrier of discomfort. It is behind a barrier of some pain. It is behind some barrier of sacrifice. You have to crash through that barrier. Do not let it stop you. And my best wishes will always be with all of you. I pray to God that you can get through on your first attempt and you get a good rank. This examination, please don't just view it as an exam, it's a journey. So you will learn so much about not just your country and the world, but you will also learn about yourself. I am not the same person I was when I first gave the attempt, and even if you give just one, I hope you only give one attempt and you succeed in that. Even in that 1 year, you will find that your personality, the way you carry yourself, your understanding of everything will be so radically changed. So therefore, do not ever think of it as some sort of great sacrifice that you have abandoned some other opportunities. You are embarking on trying to get the biggest opportunity of all, which is to serve your country. Please, please always remember that you are trying to get the opportunity to serve India, not just yourself, not just your career. It is bigger than you. If you have that perspective, if you have genuine some idea of social service, of public service, then if you fail once, or if you have trouble studying, or if you are facing some issue of laziness or whatever, that will be easier to deal with, because it is not just you, it is your society, your country which you are fighting for, which you want to improve. So please, please have a broader perspective. Thank you, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to do. How did I make myself consistent? I wasn't, because like I said, first 2 attempts I failed pre, then the next 2 attempts I got to mains, but there I found that actually the problem here is that there is not one way to fail. There are multiple ways to fail. You have to make sure that you don't make the same mistake twice, and don't make a different mistake also. So consistency wise, I will say develop an overall program of preparation which has at least some minimum level of coverage for every paper, for every topic, for every dimension, so that no matter how tough each individual year's paper is, you can at least expect to be in some sort of running, that you are not totally cut out. And like I said, after the 2 attempts in which I wrote mains, the attempt after that, right before this, I could not clear pre. So the point of that is that please understand that there is no such thing as perfect consistency. Each attempt, each year will be unique, but try to get to a minimum level of knowledge in each subject. That should be good enough.
So, can you just share the fees for PSIR optional?
PSIR optional, it's a long book list because it's topic wise, but I will say that in political science paper 1, I found the theory part, Gauba, Haywood, he has 2 books. One is Indian politics, one is I think political theory. And then if you wish to consult any particular notes, that would be helpful in addition. Please do not think that notes are be all end all, just some ready-made notes. You have to create a deeper level of understanding. In PSIR 1, I would say these books, 1A. In PSIR 1B, I found Fadia quite good. Fadia is your, it's a bit thicker, it's a large book, but you don't have to do every topic, every chapter. Just go for the ones which are more linked with your PSIR syllabus, like grassroots democracy I mentioned, so do Panchayati Raj there. In paper 2, I would say that there are some again standard books, like there is an Oxford Companion of Comparative Politics, I believe. Do the introduction of that, not the whole book, you don't have time for that. Introduction will give you an overview. Other than that, please don't get too deep into so many sources, just stick to a few and get a good understanding of it.
But it's saying the same techniques for 10 days.
I believe so. I'm pretty sure actually. See, you can use that book. Sorry, I forgot one thing. There's a book called N.D. Arora. I used that. People have not heard of it much. It has some scholarship that can be useful for PSIR. Baki, if you have any specific topic-wise questions, I can address you alone, because that's a little bit more exhaustive. So if you want, I can talk to you later.
Actually, I'm confused about paper 1B.
There's Indian governance and polity. That, like I said, Fadia gives a good overview. If you wish, you can go through the standard books of polity to get your foundations. Other than that, I will say it is more about scholarship, and actually N.D. Arora is quite good for that. N.D. Arora has chapters for the whole paper. So 1, 2, all parts. So go through the chapters there.
Can we go for paper B part, global politics by Andrew Eddy?
Yes, I was going to mention that because there are too many of them, but that's a good book. If you can cover that, do the chapters which are relevant to your syllabus and just read through them, make a few points, but don't get too much into it. It's a very large book.
So, all due respect, sir, I want to ask one thing, sir. And how to start mains writing, sir? How to start mains writing? How much syllabus should I prepare?
So you're asking how much syllabus before you start writing practice. I will suggest that you have your foundations, your basics at least somewhat set down. so that you are not just writing empty answer, just reading someone's answer and just writing down. If you want, when you complete a topic, let's say in GS, if you have completed, let's say, history, or if you have completed some part of polity, you don't have to write the whole paper. Just find the previous year's questions on history and try to solve them in a timed manner. What I would suggest for answer writing is don't immediately go for timed answers. First, get into the habit of structuring an answer. Understand, you have to get your hands, your hand grip, the way you hold the pen, everything has to be tailor-made to you. Go to YouTube, there are some videos I found very useful on how to improve your handwriting grip. So I, for example, used to hold like this. Now I hold between these two fingers, so that prevents fatigue on the thumb, which can cause a bit of an issue with writing speed. Please do not wait for finishing the whole syllabus before you start answer writing. Start before. But also don't start when you have done nothing. When you have some reasonable topics under your belt, do those ones with previous year questions, and first do it untimed, so you get the structure of an answer, the introduction, how to introduce points, how to link concepts, and then conclude. And then when you get a little more confident, do it without any closed book and do it timed. So have a stopwatch. I think everyone should buy a stopwatch, and also very importantly, please buy and please wear a wristwatch. Please do not use your phone to look at time, because the phone is it's a path to distraction. You will look at WhatsApp and all these things. And also in any way in UPSC, you cannot take your phone inside, you have to take this only. So you should have a habit of wearing a watch when you're in your home also, except when you're sleeping or when you're in the washroom. Please wear a watch at all times, so that you, no matter where you are, whether you're relaxing or not, you know that time is passing by and it's on your hands, so it'll be ready for you to see without any distraction. And once you get to a certain level of answer writing, meaning that once you can write good answers within 15 minutes, that's what will happen. It won't go straight to 9-10 minutes. Maybe you will take first 15 minutes or 20 minutes to write an answer when you're timing it. Then as you keep practicing, it will go down gradually. It will get down to 10 minutes, 9 minutes, 8 minutes. And your handwriting should also maintain consistency here. Handwriting was a big issue for me, because handwriting matters in terms of how you present yourself. So please try to also, if your handwriting is bad, be honest with yourself. Don't just try to cover it up. My handwriting is bad, so I tried to work very hard on, I got some, I think nursery class or some smaller classes when they teach kids to write. They have like a little rubber triangular grip. So use that to hold the pen. That will improve your writing stance, the way you hold the pen, and your handwriting should improve. Once you get to a good handwriting, good speed and good content, then no one can stop you. So these three things have to come: content, handwriting and speed.
Sir, how can you manage in terms of updates? Can you please understand every year it starts as new, and UPSC almost covering only 12 to 14, 12, 24 months on UPSC, and you have to start again and again.
See, you will be appearing for next year pre. See, so for that, if you want to do 24 months, what you can do is, number one, you can start going 12 months back from this date. And then secondly, instead of having to go back whenever this month elapses, then make a plan that, okay, this month has elapsed, I will do one by one, what were the political news in this 1 month from various sources, then what were the economic newses. And if you go, see, once you have done 12 months behind from this point, and then if from now on, if you do after every month, you will automatically get 24 months of coverage. That is more than enough if you can do that. Please try to, see, it's up to you if you want to go backwards or forwards. My suggestion is, if you are doing current affairs of last 12 months, go backwards. Why I'm saying this? There may be some scheme which was proposed last year in January, or some law which was proposed in January. And if you go like this, you will start January current affairs to now. Maybe 6 months afterwards, that law was junked. Maybe it was never mentioned again. Maybe some new law came. Maybe it was an ordinance and a law came and took its place, or a new ordinance came. If you go backwards, you will get the final conclusion that, okay, this thing, this was the final result. This act came into place. And then when you go back, you will see the evolution. Like I mentioned earlier, if you go backwards, you will see the true chronology of what happened. So when you write that answer, it will have a far greater depth, and it won't be confined to just the present moment. And please, if you were asking about current affairs, so please start today itself, because I'm telling you again and again, optional preparation you can do, you will be motivated to do anyway, and your GS again you will have motivation to do. But current affairs, if you don't start now, the motivation will not go up very easily later, because it seems like it is low ROI, but it is one of the highest ROI things you can do. It will give you great depth, so please do not dither on current affairs. Start today itself.
How to prepare world history?
World history, the yellow book is quite good. In addition to that, you can also look at, there are some NCRTs which, although no, NCRT is not that good now, I would say they changed it a little bit. You can also use the internet. If they have mentioned, for example, Industrial Revolution, you can just go search it on Wikipedia or some encyclopedia website, just type it in, and there's not some monopoly on knowledge in some textbooks. Since world history is a little bit lower ROI than, say, Indian history, I would have no issue with using the internet for like American Revolution. Type in American Revolution and you will get some perspective, some data, some details. French Revolution, Google kar do, you will get again. Or for example, feudalism and all. So that way you will not go too much in depth. But again, I will say the yellow books do provide each of these topics, and they have quite a good level of coverage. So start with that.
Indian political, what interesting
For PSIR, for both of these, I mostly use the internet, because I found that using the same standard texts for the political thought, no doubt you can use some standard books. I mean, Ramaswamy and Mukherjee, I think that's a good book for political thought, and there are a few others, McClelland, J.S. McClelland, but you can use the internet extensively for this. If you do that, you can get maybe newer perspectives which are not too fixed, too hackneyed. So it will give you some unique perspective. You can just go to the internet, go to Google and type in the keywords from the syllabus, and the first page of results, just go through all of them. You might find just one thing which is useful from each of them. Jot it down. Like Plato, you can just type in Plato's political thoughts. You will see stuff from Princeton or Harvard or from various YouTube videos. It will give you a much fresher perspective, I think.
Brian Nelson.
Sorry?
Brian Nelson.
Sorry?
Brian Nelson.
I'm not familiar with that. I relied more on the internet for PSIR, especially for the thinkers part, because I thought that it will give you, see, for example, Plato, if you stick to maybe a standard source from political science perspective only, they have some particular parts of his theory which they focus on, and they totally neglect other parts of his worldview. Whereas if you use the internet, you will get his global personality. You will see all elements of what he advocated, all sides of his arguments. That should give you an edge over someone who is just using a textbook approach. So please just, if it says Machiavelli, type Machiavelli in and you will just see whatever you can. You will see all elements of him, not just the political side. So you can integrate that.
So source books as in science and tech other than India.
Science and tech, I would again suggest, if the yellow books are good. Other than that, I personally use the internet. Again, I'm saying that if it's robotics, type in robotics into Google and you will see a lot of information. Furthermore, science and tech in particular, environment also, you will get, I think, 99% of your content from current affairs. So don't focus too much depth on a few years ago they used to ask a lot on the basics or on NCRTs. Nowadays they ask science and tech more from current affairs point of view. I will even say that if you do your yellow books and then if you do the current affairs method, I said that if you, for example, all of science and tech, you can go like month by month or 12 months, 24 months. Or like I said, you can break it up into, say, there's a topic called Indian contributions to science, or Indian IPR, intellectual property rights. So you just open up the current affairs modules or sources and just do that particular subtopic going back in time or going forward, up to you. And don't try to go too much into the fundamentals of scientific theories, because UPSC is not asking that much on it. They're asking more of the current applications. One more thing, please go to at least last 15-20 years or more of Nobel laureates in science and tech. That has a good ROI. This time also a big question came. I am certain next year also it will come, either in pre or main. So don't just focus on this year's or last year's Nobels in physics, chemistry, biology, in medicine and all. Please go also 10-15 years. That's not that difficult because there are a limited number, and UPSC has shown a willingness to go for Nobel Prize questions. So current affairs is your main focus here. To be very honest, I personally made science and tech for my preparation was 100% current affairs, but I will suggest that you use yellow books to get some foundation, and the internet, of course.
So according to your perspective, what is the answer of PSIR in theory?
It has to have, if it's about, for example, any part of Indian government or foreign relations, whatever it is, it has to have the basic fundamental argument that what is the essence of it. Like this you will get from any standard text. Like you have the introduction, you mention a little bit, you should have at least one scholar in your introduction. You should have at least 2 to 3 scholars maybe in the body, and ideally if you want to get good marks in PSIR, you should have one scholar in your conclusion. That is a little tough to do, but that's why PSIR, it can also be scoring because it takes that much effort. A good answer is not like a GS answer in any optional, much less in PSIR. It has to have a sophisticated level of opinion, and it should have a high level of scholarship. So that will come from hard work, pulling these names and their views out from various sources, and then you have to also remember them and be willing and able to use them in an answer. So the answer should appear like a good, well-researched, I would say newspaper article possibly, because it will have various examples, it will have various statements by authorities, like political authorities, thinkers. So it should be like a broad, high-level analysis, not a nitty-gritty, small, detail-level paper.
During PSIR, if someone is from the background that you suppose as engineering, and someone is from the engineering background.
Okay.
And he is taking outside as mathematics, not anything related to the politics or anything related to the IAS or IGS department. Then how much it will affect you?
Not at all. I just said that if you choose an optional which has a linkage with what you wish to do, that can help you, but it won't have an impact if you choose an optional which is not directly linked. Rather you will see, your optional choice is not just the product of this element, that how it will go with the others. It is also because you have to get any rank, much less a higher rank, you need to really excel in your optional, because there is a limit to how much you will get in GS. So in optional paper, you must be, I would say, excellent in terms of your knowledge and answer writing, because like I said, professors are checking it, they are domain experts, not like GS where they are generalists. So please do not try to just view it as an adjunct to GS. It is its own standalone. If you are very good in what optional you mentioned and it has no link to the rest, don't worry. If you get good marks in the optional, if you have a good awareness of it, if you have a good command of it, you will have no loss, and rather if you get good marks, you will make up for any fall in marks in GS.
Is there impact from PI point of view?
From?
PI point of view, personal interview point of view.
I don't think so. I mean, see, you cannot try to make your decisions based on what they will say in the interview a year and a half from now, because if your optional is not up to the mark and if you are not fully comfortable with it, or if you have chosen an optional just to impress the future board, it is tough to get to the board then. So please, and one more thing regarding the interview board, please do not be frightened of it or them. There is nothing frightening. It is the most exciting part of the exam, I will say. Every other part of the exam you have to write and it is anonymous. Here only you can show your true personality. Do not have any complex on this matter of any optional or background. They will not judge you adversely. Sir.
So,
So is it important to make notes from the newspaper, like the current affairs showing a side, like students providing us with insight or that I read many of the current affairs, but I found like similar to the newspaper. But it's really important to make notes out from the newspaper.
See, making of notes is a outcome of your own personality. If you are a visual learner or if you are a verbal learner, how you memorize things. If you have a very good memory, then some people may not make notes. If you need to revise multiple times or you need to literally write and then revise, then notes are necessary for you. So do not view it as either or. As regards newspapers, it can be a bit tricky because if you start making very extensive notes from newspaper every day, you will end up with hundreds or thousands of pages by that time. So it has to be a little bit limited. So in my case, I did not literally make notes from all the papers. I used to read the papers, and because I was doing it over these months and I was going backward forward, in my mind that kept getting reinforced because I didn't have to use multiple types of papers or sources. I instead let the progression of time show me like what is happening in the particular field. Regarding newspapers themselves, please do not have any sort of hang up about it that you have to only make notes using it. A newspaper is meant to be read first and foremost. If you make notes on it, that is a second step. So don't open the newspaper and immediately start making notes. Go through maybe the first page, and if you find something genuinely useful for UPSC from any point of view, then you can jot something down. But like I said, my personal strategy was not to go by periods, like going by a periodical approach, like for example, that you do a day's newspaper or you do a month's newspapers or magazines. I instead wanted to use like a topic-based approach. Like I would do science and tech, and I would use various sources or compilations going backwards in time in this manner. Like for example, recitals, you can use recitals to go backwards and understand the evolution of that topic. If you want to do newspapers as well and you have a good writing speed, then you can make notes. But one more warning about notes is, if you have a book or a chapter and it is, let's say you have a chapter and it is like 10 pages, and if you end up making 6-7 pages of notes, that would be a little inefficient. However, I will say this, some people, the very act of just writing the notes, because you know when you use your hand to write something out, it does create a stronger connection. Some people that is necessary. So if you find that that greatly improves your recall, that if you jot something down, there is a 100% increase in your memory over when you just read it, then you please make notes and make them diligently. And as a bonus, you will also improve your handwriting and writing speed. So you choose based on your own personality. Ethics, yellow books are good. There is a book called Lexicon, you can use that. Other than that, like I said again, I use the internet very extensively for this. Like ethics, the theory of ethics. In addition to the standard sources, you can get maybe, like I said, go to Google and just type in the keywords. If it is about, say, something like dimensions, a human dimension of ethics, just type that in. You will find some theory about it. You will find maybe a Wikipedia page, maybe some university, some YouTube, some university article, some YouTube video, and you can just jot down or maybe just read maybe one extra dimension or a few extra dimensions and add it to your standard books. But yellow book, Lexicon, you can use either of them. I would suggest use both. Start as with your yellow book as the foundation, and if you have the time and inclination, you can use Lexicon to get some examples and some more illustrations which will make your answers better. Yes.
Source for post-India independence.
Again, yellow book, in this post-independence, India after Gandhi, I believe Ramchandra Guha wrote that, or and there's also a book by Bipin Chandra, I'm forgetting the name right now, or maybe I'm mixing it up, but Ramchandra Guha is very good, India after Gandhi, I believe. And yellow book, again, you have a special yellow book on, you see, yellow books have been provided in terms of the specific syllabus points, so they will give you a overview of every dimension of the syllabus. On top of that, then you can add, as per your time, as per your working method. You can add more sources, but don't get too bogged down in this part because it does not have a very high ROI, since anyway history is just part of GS1 and then post-independence history is just part of that further. Use the yellow books and if, at most this one book by Guha.
Which post preference is best if I want to make some reasonable changes in society, especially for women's empowerment and education?
For what you have said, IAS. If that is your passion, if genuinely you get up in the morning and that is what drives you, that is what has caused you to come here, that is what has caused you to be sitting here, and if that is what you visualize yourself doing after becoming an officer, then it is IAS, no question about it. So. Sorry? I didn't have a revision strategy as such. You should have it when you make your notes or when you have covered your topics, like if you have done current affairs or if you have covered some static topics. Before the prelims, I would suggest at least maybe 8 weeks should be given, in my opinion. 8 weeks just of revising what you have written down or what you have read before and trying to keep that fresh in your mind for the prelims. For the main itself, you need a bit more revision because in the mains you need to answer subjective questions, so you need to have more material and you need to recall that material. So for main examination, you need to start, since I said you have to integrate your pre and main preparation, your main preparation should have been finished again 8 weeks before the pre itself. So the 8 weeks before the pre should be for pre, not for main again. So that is for revision of pre. Once the day of the pre, in my opinion, since the time is so limited between pre and main, that very evening you should start with, I know it's not easy, but if you want to, you just that very evening just start revising whatever you had done previous to the pre for your mains, and also have a look a little bit at your preliminary revision material also. Since it is integrated, you won't have a big issue, but I will suggest that once your pre is over, that whole period from pre to main, you should be number 1 doing revisions of your mains syllabus you have done for the pre. Number 2, you should be doing answer writing day in, day out. And number 3, you should be trying to see if you can add any nuggets of value and also updating. You need to update also, since pre happens in this month and then main happens here and a lot of things are happening. Like even in this time in mains, they asked about COP26 or they asked about some summits which happened between the pre and main or rather closer to the main. So you need to also side by side, see you have already done your current affairs, let's say 12 months before that, then you are doing current affairs of that particular month. You won't get a chance to revise those current affairs because they are too close to the exam, but just read through them, and the rest of the revision I will suggest you focus on your optional most of all, because your optional is the one where you need to revise the most. Otherwise you will lose that depth. So please start revising 8 weeks before pre and then start revising again immediately after pre. That should be more than enough.
But do we have to make notes other than class notes for main?
It depends on the kind of notes you make. If the notes you make in class are, I'll give you a suggestion. If you come to class and you take down notes on a topic, leave some space or leave one page on the other side empty, and on that page, if you want, you can do some research on your own. Let's say you learnt about a topic today. Let us say it is about some part of Indian culture, something about Indian dance, and you jotted down some class notes. Now, when you go home, read that, revise that, it will get stuck in your memory, that's good. And if you have a small space or margin there, you can just go to Google, search something. If you find something not covered or something additional, something interesting which you like, just jot it down, just one, two little points. But please don't get into the trap of thinking that the exam is about making notes. That is just a method. I personally in this attempt did not make notes because I had a lot of experience going back. But since it is your first attempt, you have to make notes, no question about it. Just make sure that they don't go out of hand, because notes are not your goal. Performing in the exam is. So make sure that they are also, you can also revise them, because I made a mistake in my first attempt. I made current affairs notes on newspapers and I ended up with unindexed, completely unorganized, like this much pile, I could not revise it. So make sure that they are concise, crisp, limited, and serve as a shorthand. They should not be longer than the actual source material, or even close to it. Much, much shorter. How to remember the facts? You just have to remember the facts, because there is no shortcut here. You have to see how you memorize things. What is your memory? What is your level of memory? Do you immediately recall something when you read it? Do you need 10 revisions? Do you need to write it down? If you get it from 10 revisions, you get it from 10 revisions. If not, just read it. Please do not try to think that you have to memorize things, and just because what will happen, you'll just stop studying and then say, okay, I have not memorized this. If you read it, if you revise it, it will stick in your mind. Don't worry about it. Don't be alarmed that you can't recall it right now. In the exam hall, particularly in pre, you will get some cues. So then you can eliminate, so don't be worried about it. You will remember. See, I will suggest that is entirely up to each person, whether they are morning person, evening person, when they are more active, when they have like some recreational activities, when they go whatever to go for a walk or whatever. But my suggestion is that regardless of how you organize your day, please make sure that you cover at least a broad spectrum of topics each day. Don't get focused on one topic, and like I said, split up your hours, split up your days into specific tasks, so that don't try to control your time as such. Don't think that you will become completely the master of your time. Try to have a discipline, try to have a broad idea of what you will do, and then your discipline, your idea will become more concrete over time. It will happen.
How much time should I devote for optional part?
Depends on the optional, depends on the level of preparation you want to do. I will suggest that have you started yet? So it's good, you have started in right time. My view is that you should start at least 1 year before the pre. And in terms of time, you are asking daily. I would say maybe if you are starting out, not less than 3-4 hours on optional, because of the depth you need, the number of scholars and expertise you need in that, and also the sort of recall required for optional. So 3-4 hours should be good for that. That's
Sir, why you choose IFS instead of IAS?
it was my childhood dream. Since I was a small boy, I always wanted to be foreign service officer, and IAS is an excellent job. Like she said, it is the job it is the calling public service which will allow you to connect with people and to improve their lives. But you also have to balance that with your own personality, with your own aptitude. My own interest always went to foreign relations, and I found it very exciting. So I didn't have to even work hard for that. I would just read it out of interest. And if you find an optional, or if you find, if you find a service choice which can motivate you, no matter what service it is, please go for it. IFS for me was a dream. Whatever you choose should be your dream, and it should be yours only. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks.